right now, we're still about to have another conversation. And this time, it's a conversation on an initiative that is about to or potentially revolutionize how we use liquefied petroleum gas in Ghana. And it's all about the cylinder recirculation model, or the CRM. This is actually introduced by the National Petroleum Authority, and this model actually aims in enhancing safety, efficiency, and accessibility. So in the studio with me is Mr. Obed Crane Boachi, who's the head of gas at the National Petroleum Authority, and Mohammed Abdul Kudus, head of communications at the National Petroleum Authority. You're welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, now, CRM. Can you give us a bit of an overview of what CRM is all about?
Okay, thank you. And thank you for having us on your program this morning. So our CRM, the cylinder recirculation model, is a way of distribution of LPG, particularly for household use. And this was introduced in the year 2017 when the Ministry of Energy introduced the National LPG Promotion Program.
Right.
The goal of that program was to achieve 50% access to LPG by the year 2030.
Right.
At the time, we were hovering around 23%.
Right.
And we saw the need to improve access as one of the ways to ensure that we achieve this target. And so we looked at the model for distribution of LPG as at that time, which is the old model where we own cylinders, we take it to the refilling station, and then we stand there, it is filled for us, and then we take it home. And then we realized it is fraught with challenges. That is not allowing us to scale up and achieve the targets that we wanted or we desired to get to.
Right.
And so we looked around and thought of ways through which we can improve the distribution model so that we could bring LPG to people more in a less costly way, whilst we'll be able to reach areas where we hitherto could not go with LPG. And so we identified the cylinder recirculation model as a model where you'd fill cylinders in a single location, which is usually the bottling plant. And then you transport these cylinders to depots or warehouses. And then from those locations, you can move smaller quantities into the communities so that everybody could have access to gas. And so it takes away the huge capital cost of having to set up a refill station in places like the localities, the small towns and villages where there are no refilling stations. And also, even in our towns and cities, I'm sure when you walk around, you see people carrying their cylinders going for a long distance before gaining LPG. So far as you bring the cylinder exchange points into the communities, you reduce the distances to refilling of LPG. And so in a nutshell, it is a model that allows us to bring LPG to consumers in a more efficient manner, in a more safer manner, and also, less costly as compared to the old system of distribution.
Right. All right. So, Mr. Kudu, so this actually sounds very interesting, especially for the fact it's also looking at the safety of people and also the efficiency and cost. But now, how sustainable is this?
Sustainable it should be, because gas is actually a product that would continue to consume. What we only are introducing is the ability and the manner to get it to the people. So in this case, we're trying to take away as much as possible the hassle and also reduce as much as possible the possibility of the accidents. For many people, they're not able to use or they are not willing to use LPG because of the propensity of the accidents. And in this particular manner, we want to, as much as possible, reduce it. A lot of the time, the accidents are caused because of the leakage that comes about. When the gas is in the cylinder, it is harmless. When it escapes out of the cylinder, that is where the possibility of a danger is going to be. And the study has shown that the valve normally is the source of escape for the gas. And it is because of many of us not able to, as regularly as possible, change the valve. Then we create that particular escape route for the gas. With CRM, there's going to be a regular change of the valve, because at every time that you go to exchange your empty cylinder for a filled cylinder, the empty cylinder goes back into the refurbishing processes, okay, for the machine to work on it. For those that are fit for purpose, they get back into the system. Those that are not fit for purpose, they are actually put aside. So at all times, you are guaranteed of a cylinder that is fit for purpose, and for that matter is able to reduce the possibility of accident as much as possible. And all of this put together obviously should be making this whole a product and its usage to the domestic user as sustainable as possible.
Right. So, but how will the CRM impact consumers, especially in terms of cost and convenience? You talked about, you know, having a point where everyone can just go to instead of, you know, carrying their gas around, so where they can just go and, you know, exchange. But right now, what's the cost going to be like on a consumer, especially for the fact that I don't know if it's close to my house. I don't know how long I have to drive to go and do all this. So how, you know, have you thought about the cost on, you know, we consumers?
Yes, in fact, we know cost to be one of the three main barriers when it comes to use of LPG. I mentioned distances, long distances, accessibility. That's one of the barriers. Cost is another, and then also the initial investment cost of having to buy a cylinder for most people is also another barrier. And so the CRM, what the CRM does is it takes away two of those barriers away in terms of the long distances. What I mean by long distances is that I mentioned that in the CRM, what we need are cylinder exchange points. These are cylinder exchange points that are going to be in our communities. So for instance, if you are in Dansuman and there's a current refilling station, that refilling station is going to transition to a depot-like facility.
Okay, so it's not that you're now going to build another one?
No.
Okay.
So, I mean, that is one thing we want to clarify.
Right.
Those old facilities are not going to be obsolete.
Right.
It is going to be the holding facility where we would now come to deposit, say, 100 to 150 cylinders.
Right.
And then from that point, it's just like a Guinness depot.
Right.
When you go, there's a small fridge where you can buy a bottle if you want, but it's basically a depot. So from that point, cylinders will be moved further down into the communities. So in your community, if your mother has a provision store and there's a space that is safe, NPA comes to inspect the location and it's safe for us to put a cage. We'll put a cage there, and that cage or that location would act as a cylinder exchange point. And so right inside your community, at a walking distance, you could have access to a cylinder in your community. Again, the LPG marketing company and the dealers, from their facility in Dansuman, as I mentioned, can do home delivery services. Of course, that may come at a fee or at a charge. I mean, depending on you signing on to that, service. And so indeed, it's going to make it more convenient. It's going to bring it closer to consumers in that regard. In terms of cost, we have been conscious of the fact that cost is a barrier. And so even in implementing CRM, we have tried as much to introduce strategies so that we don't increase the cost of LPG. Ordinarily, if you are introducing new activities or new service providers, as we have done with regards to the bottling plant operation and also investment in the cylinders, it would have to be paid for in the price build-up.
Right.
Okay. And so you would realize recently there were discussions in the media that we inserted some $80 per metric ton in the price of LPG. Now, before we did that, we tendered the supply of LPG. What that did was it allowed us to reduce the premiums. The premiums is the cost on LPG when we import LPG. It allowed us to reduce the premiums by about $70 to $80 per metric ton. And so when we brought in the margin, it sort of negated it.
Right.
And so we did that with the idea in mind that we didn't want to increase the price of LPG by introducing CRM.
Right.
But then, of course, there are factors that come into play when it comes to price of LPG. When the world market prices go up, LPG also goes up. When the CD dollar fluctuations occur, LPG prices go as well. But then we are conscious of this. We are currently in discussions with the Ministry of Finance to look at some of the taxes and look at the possibility of displacing some of the taxes. If you recall recently, I think the Ministry of Finance removed the price stabilization and recovery levy of LPG, but then it had to be reintroduced again due to some constraints.
All right, so Mr. Kudus, before I let you go, so what is the NPA doing about, creating a level playground for marketers too? And how will the LPG marketers be integrated into this CRM? Because it's important for everybody to work together.
Okay, so in Ober's narrative, he recounted how the process started in 2017. And that journey from then till now has always been with the marketers along. So at all points, we've had discussions with them. We've had modification of positions because of concerns that they have. Ultimately, we are prioritizing them because they are going to be central to the sustainability of this whole program. And that is why in the framework, we've put them at the center, where if anybody was to have a capital, for example, and wish to come into the business, you would have to come through them.
Right.
You don't on your own establish a cage or an exchange point and begin to be in business of LPG. You need to come through them, and then the MPA would license you accordingly. So yes, we've had some apprehensions actually being registered by them, and they've issued 1 or 2 press conferences and those things. But it is a work in progress,
right.
and we'll continue to engage them, we'll continue to move along with them. Like I said, they are central to the sustainability and success of this program. And so they are with us, and we'll continue to be with them.
Thank you so much. I think this has been a very important conversation that we just had, and I wish we had more time, but I'd like to invite my co-host, Kweku David, to join us on the set as we wrap up today.
Okay.
All right. That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the rollout. Yeah. When are you beginning?
We've actually started.
Already, okay.
Somewhere September last year, we announced that we were starting. What we did from then was to give the service providers the permission to put the cages in some of the locations. And so now when you drive through town, in some locations, you begin to see some of the cages with branded cylinders in them. And you can go there and then begin the exchange process.
Right.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking to Obed Crane Boache, who's the head of gas at the National Petroleum Authority, and Mohammed Abdul Kudus, who's the head of communication at the National Petroleum Authority. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Chris Carter.
And I'm David Kweku Sechi. Keep watching Channel One TV.